Conditions promising world peace and prosperity were never more favorable than now. U.S. Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan, 1913. Within 1 year of this quote, a single gunshot sparked a chain of events that lasted well over 30 years. These chain of events led to two major wars: starvation, disease, economic depression, genocide, and human suffering. During these 30 years, the German leader set out on a quest for Lebensraum, or living space for the suffering German people. This is a map of 1940s Europe, on the eve of Operation Barbarossa, or the invasion of the Soviet Union. The Germans' goal was to take Western Soviet Union and annex it into Germany and push the Soviets well back over the Ural Mountains. This combined arms assault with tanks, infantry, and planes, with allies of Finland, Romania, and Italy, stretching a 1,500-mile-long line from Finland all the way to the Black Sea. This is the story of Operation Barbarossa to Stalingrad, 1941 to 1943. This is a pre-war map of Europe before the Second World War in 1939. On August 23, 1939, the Soviet-German Non-Aggression Pact was signed in Moscow, Russia. German Foreign Minister Ribbentrop, seated below, and the Soviet Foreign Minister Molotov both signed the pact. And to Molotov's left is the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. The pact concluded that both countries could not declare war or engage in any conflict against each other, and if one country went to war, the other country in the pact would have to help the country in war, and both countries would receive a substantial amount of territory in Eastern Europe. This is Europe post-non-aggression pact. In 1939, Germany has claims on Western Poland and Lithuania, while the Soviet Union has claims on Finland, Latvia, Estonia, Eastern Poland, and parts of Romania. Germany invaded Western Poland on September 1st, 1939, officially starting World War II when the United Kingdom and France declared war on Germany 2 days later on September 3rd. The Soviet Union invaded Eastern Poland on September 17th, 1939, and Poland remained non-existent throughout the war. What I find interesting is that when the Soviet Union invaded the Eastern Poland, the United Kingdom and France did not declare war on the Soviet Union, unlike they did with Germany when Germany first invaded Western Poland. And during the Battle of Britain and Battle of France, the USSR did not aid Germany in war, as Germany was in war with Britain and France. June 22nd marks the beginning of Operation Barbarossa. The basic strategy for the invasion was to have a three-pronged attack with three army groups. Army Group North was tasked with capturing Leningrad, Army Group Center was tasked with capturing Moscow, and Army Group South was tasked with capturing Ukraine, Stalingrad, and the Caucasus oil fields for fuel and supplies. Blitzkrieg was used at the beginning of the invasion, but the lines came to a halt once the Russian winter hit in December of 1941. They wanted to have their objectives before winter, but fall rains caused heavy amounts of mud, which halted vehicles in their paths and required manual labor to move. This map shown here shows the German lines and how far they advanced into Russia from 1941 to 1943, with their objectives shown and the border they wanted to reach in order to claim living space. German troops began their march into Russia on June 22, 1941, marking the beginning of the Eastern Front. The Germans invade swiftly into Soviet-occupied Poland and eventually into the Russian mainland. They encounter little resistance, as the Soviets were caught off guard at the beginning of the invasion due to the promise of the non-aggression pact signed by Germany and Russia 2 years earlier in 1939. The first week of fighting, the Germans captured about 150,000 Soviet troops and took them as POWs and pushed into Belarus and Ukraine. By December of 1941, the Germans were halted outside of Moscow, and German troops managed to besiege Leningrad as the winter set in. All German lines were halted during the Russian winter and were to be advanced in the spring. Next offensives was Fall Blau, or Case Blue, aimed for the Caucasus oil fields, and most importantly, Stalingrad. Case Blue, a daring summer offensive of 1942, as the German Army Group South advanced into the Caucasus oil fields to regain oil for fuel. The goal of this was to capture as much oil fields as possibly could and to advance into the city of Stalingrad. Both leaders of Germany and the Soviet Union wanted the city for its namesake, as it was named after the Soviet leader at the time. There's also some tactical advantages with this as well, because if the Germans captured Stalingrad, the Volga traffic would be cut off, so no reinforcements could get in. Stalingrad, the turning point of World War II. Army Group North has besieged Leningrad and is still fighting Soviet forces. Army Group Center has stalled outside of Moscow and is still encountering heavy Soviet resistance. And Army Group South has pushed into the Caucasus oil fields and eventually into Stalingrad. The German 6th Army under command of Friedrich Paulus pushes into Stalingrad in mid-July of 1942, where fighting lasts till February 2nd, 1943, as the capitulation of the 6th Army leads to a German defeat in Stalingrad. The Battle of Kursk was the last German summer offensive of 1943, where German forces tried to capture the Soviet city of Kursk. A year earlier, the Germans had Kursk, but eventually lost it after the Battle of Stalingrad. This offensive tries to regain the German strength, as this is the largest tank battle in the history of warfare. After the battles of Stalingrad and Kursk in 1943, the German momentum on the Eastern Front is lost and the tide soon turns to the Soviets. The German armies have failed to reach their three main objectives of Leningrad, Moscow, Stalingrad with the Caucasus oil fields. In the summer of 1943, the Soviets launched major counteroffensives that ravaged Russian and Polish lands. The German armies maintained a defensive position but are soon overwhelmed and pushed back to Germany. In the end, one man's ambitions to create living space and build an empire caused a catastrophic loss of human life and human suffering. These events in Eastern Europe are measured with natural plagues such as the Black Plague of Europe, the Spanish flu of 1918, and smallpox in the Americas in the 1400s. In the end, though, this will be remembered as one of the most tragic events in human history.